Today, we're doing something pretty unusual, actually.
Yes, quite different.
We're taking a foundational text, a key piece of research you might come across in your studies, and instead of reading it, we're going to perform, well, a kind of source archaeology.
Exactly. Think of it like forensics for documents.
We're diving into the packaging, the context, the history, the provenance of the document itself, not the words inside.
That's the mission. We want to show you how much practical, intellectual insight you can get just from the metadata. It's all about dissecting the identifiers, the bibliographic data.
A shortcut to understanding the source's age and scope, basically.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's introduce the artifact we're looking at today. It's an excerpt, right, from a work called Artificial Intelligence, A Philosophical Introduction.
That title alone tells you a lot, doesn't it? Philosophical Introduction.
It does. So who wrote it?
The author is B. Jack Copeland. And the publication date, 1993.
1993, okay.
Published by Wiley-Blackwell, which, it notes, is an imprint of John Wiley & Sons, Ltd.
Right. So that gives us the big three. Who, when, and where. Copeland, 1993, Wiley-Blackwell.
And like you said, that when 1993, that's probably the most revealing part, intellectually speaking.
Okay, let's really unpack that. 1993. When you see a philosophical introduction to AI from that specific year, well, it immediately tells you something about the context, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You know exactly what kind of intellectual neighborhood you're entering.
This is post the AI winters, the big funding droughts of the 70s and 80s.
Aye.
But crucially, it's before the internet really exploded globally, and, decades before things like deep learning, big data, LLMs as we know them.
Yes, decades.
Yeah.
So what's fascinating is that a book like this, from 93, it almost has to engage with the dominant paradigm of the time.
Which was?
Symbolic AI, Joko FAI, as they sometimes call it, good old-fashioned AI.
Ah, yes. Rule-based systems, logic, symbol manipulation.
Exactly. That was the era where the main idea was that intelligence could be programmed using formal logic, rules, symbols, like a very complex game of chess played at high speed.
So Copeland, writing a philosophical introduction back then, he wasn't talking about neural network architectures or anything like that.
Not at all. He'd be focused on whether a system that just follows rules, a symbolic system, could ever genuinely possess a mind.
He'd be wrestling with the big philosophical challenges of that time, like Searle's Chinese room argument, for instance.
Precisely. That's the kind of debate that was central. The book's existence, published by a serious academic press like Wiley-Blackwell, it signals that the core discussion is about these really fundamental questions. What is computation? What counts as a mind? Can a machine that just shuffles symbols ever actually understand the meaning of those symbols?
The symbol grounding problem.
Yes. A huge philosophical hurdle in 1993. And, if you think about it, it's a question that still echoes today with modern AI, perhaps in different forms.
Okay, but let me push back a little. Why should you, our listener, care so much about a book from, over 30 years ago? Couldn't you just read a modern summary of these philosophical issues?
Well, you could, but you'd lose something vital. You'd lose the context. Knowing it's from 1993 gives you a massive advantage. It tells you what the author didn't know, couldn't have known.
Ah, I see.
When you read Copeland, you're getting a raw, unfiltered look at the core philosophical problems before the technological developments we see now. Before today's answers, however flawed they might be, even existed.
So it's like pristine source material for understanding where these arguments originated.
Exactly. It helps you understand the genesis of these debates.
That makes a lot of sense. You're using the date to manage expectations, focus your reading. Okay, let's pivot a bit now from the intellectual side to the digital context. This document we have, it's got more than just the author and date, right? It's kind of littered with technical identifiers.
It is. You've got the standard ISBN, of course, 9780631183846. That tracks its official publication. But then you see these other bits of internal jargon that tell a story about this specific copy we're looking at. Well, there's this marker 1, PT, 1993. And then this really long string of letters and numbers. 341243942S7 FC F3C4 FCF STFE F59.
Okay, that string. That looks like pure computer code. Why should we care about that? What does that digital fingerprint tell us?
Well, it's actually quite important. It signifies the transition of this book from just an idea or a physical object into a verifiable digital object, the one PT 1993 marker.
Oh.
Well, it likely means this specific file was made from part 1 of the print text, published in 1993. That tells you a bit about how it was digitized.
Okay.
But that long alphanumeric string, that's even more crucial, I think.
How so?
That string is almost certainly what's called a cryptographic hash, or a checksum.
Right.
Basically, it's a unique digital signature for the file. It's generated based on every single bit of data inside it.
So if anything changes, even a tiny bit.
The whole hash changes completely.
Ah, okay, so it's not just a label, it's a guarantee of sorts. Like, it
Yeah.
confirms this digital version hasn't been tampered with, at least since this hash was generated.
Exactly that. It provides integrity. It shows the kind of detailed infrastructure that's now used to track knowledge. We've moved from a physical book in 1993, controlled by its publisher, to a digital object tracked by its actual content via this hash.
So you see the journey right there, from the 1993 physical book to this verifiable digital file. That's quite a leap.
It really is. And it highlights the tension between the physical origin and its digital persistence and verification.
That's a fantastic example of what you called source forensics. Okay, so we have this layer of sophisticated digital tracking.
Yeah.
But then we look at the actual document we have, and there's something much messier slapped right on top.
Yes, that rather intrusive watermark.
The notice, a PDF page cut demo, that kind of jolts you back to reality, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And this is where the story of how knowledge gets distributed becomes, well, really complicated and honestly a bit frustrating if you're trying to learn.
How do you mean?
Well, you have this foundational philosophical text published by a major academic publisher, Wiley-Blackwell, which signals high standards, rigor.
Right.
But the copy we're looking at, this digital version, has these very obvious, very strict limits on access. It's a demo file.
And it explicitly tells you, purchase from www.atdf.com to remove the watermark.
Exactly.
So instantly the story shifts. It's not just about 1993 philosophy anymore. It's about how knowledge is controlled today.
Absolutely. That watermark tells a whole story about modern knowledge control. In 1993, access barriers were mostly economic, buying the book, or physical, like needing library access.
Sure.
But today, the content itself, Copeland's ideas, they're separated from the original publisher and gated by this secondary software company, APDF, using a demo restriction.
So even classic foundational knowledge gets tangled up in layers of digital rights management, or DRM?
That's what this shows. The watermark isn't just annoying background noise. It's like a living document of how knowledge access has changed.
The philosophical questions Copeland raised might still be relevant.
They are.
But the question of who gets to read those questions and how, that's fundamentally different now than when he wrote the book.
This specific file, this artifact, it's basically a mini history lesson in digital rights, access, and maybe the challenges of knowledge democratization. It shows that even to engage with a seminal academic work like this, you might have to navigate demo files, watermarks, complex licensing, or find it in specific digital archives.
And speaking of archives, there's one last piece of context here, isn't there? Right at the end of the metadata.
Yes, the reference annasarchive.pdf.
What does that suggest?
Yeah, well, it implies yet another layer of digital handling or management has touched this particular file. It's like another fingerprint added to the document's journey.
So this single file has traveled from Copeland's desk to Wiley-Blackwell, digitized somehow, fingerprinted with a hash, watermarked by APDF, and then potentially archived or distributed via something called Anna's Archive.
It's a digital timeline right there. It shows how physical sources get absorbed, sometimes restricted, sometimes archived by all these different players over time.
The sheer complexity of tracking just one book's journey, it's really ballooned since 1993.
It absolutely has.
Yeah.
What started as a relatively simple author-publisher relationship has become this quite convoluted chain of digital custody.
Okay, let's circle back then and try to synthesize all this. Our mission was source archaeology using only the metadata.
Right.
And I think we've done it. We've built a pretty robust profile without reading the main text. We know the who, B. Jack Copeland. The crucial when, 1993, framing it within that symbolic AI pre-modern internet era.
The where? Wiley-Blackwell telling us it's academically serious.
And just as importantly, the how it exists for us today as a digitally tracked but also restriction-laden watermark demo file, possibly passed through various archives.
And this whole exercise, it really underlines that critical skill for any learner. Assessing the vintage and the provenance of a source before you even start engaging with its arguments.
Oh, so?
Well, knowing the intellectual context is 1993 lets you anticipate the kinds of arguments Copeland is likely making. You expect symbolic arguments, maybe functionalist points about minds, and you instantly recognize what he couldn't have addressed, like, the massive statistical learning models that dominate AI today.
So it stops you reading it out of context. You approach it not just as some old book, but as a specific piece of philosophy tackling problems from a particular point in time, problems that might still be relevant.
Exactly. It ensures you're reading it with the right historical and intellectual lens.
So we used just this limited metadata to get a deep understanding of the context around a classic AI philosophy text.
We did. But now, let's leave you, the listener, with a final thought. Something to chew on, building on that crucial 1993 date and the book's philosophical focus.
Okay, here's where you can make this further.
Right. So given that this philosophical introduction was written when, as we discussed, a huge problem was symbol grounding how to make a computer truly understand the symbols it manipulates. Here's the question. Which foundational issues from that era, from 1993, are still the most relevant, the most persistent challenges for today's AI? Even the really powerful, statistically driven models like LLMs.
Hmm. Do things like large language models maybe suffer from a more sophisticated, maybe hidden version of that same symbolic emptiness Copeland was likely examining back then?
That's the question to mull over. When you encounter these foundational texts, ask yourself, how did their biggest philosophical problems survive the technological revolution? Did they survive? Did they morph?
That's definitely something worth exploring on your own. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into context.